Would you welcome Chevy Chase?
Johnny Carson made stars, but Jerry Seinfeld, he never got the crown. Carson thought Jerry was arrogant. He despised his flashy cars, his cold attitude, even his scandalous romance with a teenage girl. And when Seinfeld mocked the very talk show format Carson created, that was the final blow. This wasn't just dislike. It was a silent war between comedy's kingmaker and the man who became the richest comedian alive. Stay with me, because the truth behind this feud is darker, stranger, and more revealing than anyone ever knew. In the golden age of television, Johnny Carson wasn't just a host. He was the gatekeeper of comedy. One appearance on The Tonight Show could turn a struggling comic into a household name overnight. Carson's approval meant everything. It wasn't just fame, it was credibility. It was respect. Robin Williams, Joan Rivers, David Letterman, Carson opened the door for all of them, and when he welcomed you to the couch after your set, that was the ultimate blessing. But Jerry Seinfeld? He never got that moment. Carson never gave him the nod that launched legends. And that silence spoke louder than words. But why? What made Johnny draw the line with Jerry when so many others got his blessing? In 1993, Jerry Seinfeld was untouchable. His sitcom ruled Thursday nights. He was rich, adored, unstoppable. And then came Shoshana Lonstein, a 17-year-old student. Jerry was 38. The two were photographed together everywhere, while he insisted they were just friends until she turned 18. America wasn't buying it. Magazines blasted him. People ran the cover story The Graduate. Newsweek called it unsettling. And Johnny Carson? He was disgusted. Old school, classy, protective of television's image. He thought Jerry had crossed a line you don't come back from. He refused to mention the relationship on his show. When a writer slipped in a joke about it and the audience went silent, Carson ordered, "Never again." To him, Jerry wasn't just reckless, he was tacky. But this was only the beginning of Carson's silent war against Seinfeld. Behind the cameras, Jerry Seinfeld wasn't the smiling comic America thought he was. Crew members described him as cold, detached, like there was an invisible wall around him. He showed up on time. He delivered his lines. But gratitude? Warmth? Connection? Almost never. Johnny Carson noticed. Because Carson was the opposite. He learned people's names. He asked about their families. He treated even stagehands with respect. And then came the moment that sealed it. Jerry casually dismissed other comedians, even Carson's favorites like David Letterman and Jay Leno, saying they tried too hard to connect with audiences. The audience laughed. But in the green room, silence. Carson's smile tightened. For the king of late night, Jerry's arrogance wasn't confidence. It was insecurity. And the more Carson saw it, the more he pulled away. But things were about to get even uglier, because Jerry didn't just clash with Carson's personality. He clashed with his values. Johnny Carson made millions, but he lived quietly. He hated bragging. To him, class meant humility. Jerry Seinfeld, the complete opposite. He bragged about his fortune. A private jet, over 100 Porsches, $100 million a year from reruns alone. Carson shook his head. "You don't get funnier when your garage gets bigger," he once told a writer. For Carson, comedy came from real life, from struggle, from observing the everyday. But Jerry flaunted luxury as part of his brand. And for Carson, a man who grew up during the Great Depression, it was everything he despised. To him, Jerry wasn't just out of touch. He was losing the very connection that makes comedy powerful. And soon, Seinfeld would go even further. He wouldn't just reject Carson's values, he'd insult his entire legacy. For 30 years, Johnny Carson ruled late night. He built the blueprint every host followed. The monologue, the desk, the couch, it was his kingdom. And he guarded it fiercely. Then came Jerry Seinfeld, armed with comedians in cars getting coffee. A show that wasn't just different, it was a rejection of everything Carson stood for. No studio, no audience, no desk, just Jerry, flaunting luxury cars while sipping coffee with celebrities. He called it real. He mocked traditional talk shows as fake, outdated, and boring. The implication was clear. Carson's life's work didn't matter anymore. And Carson felt the sting. This was the man whose career had been launched on The Tonight Show. Without Carson's platform, Jerry might never have broken through. And now, he was tearing it down. Carson never raged in public. That wasn't his style. But behind closed doors, friends recalled the hurt. This wasn't just about comedy. It was about respect. Carson believed the talk show was sacred. It wasn't just interviews. It was America's nightly town square. It had carried the country through assassinations, wars, scandals, and celebrations. For Jerry to dismiss that as fake enthusiasm, it cut deep. During retirement, Carson let out one bitter truth. He quipped, "Without talk shows, Jerry would still be performing in pizza parlors on Long Island." It was delivered with a laugh, but behind the laugh was a scar. Because Carson could forgive arrogance. He could forgive scandal. But mocking the very format he built, that was betrayal. And this betrayal only sharpened Carson's belief about Seinfeld. That Jerry wasn't just arrogant, he was empty. Johnny Carson believed comedy had to mean something. Not just quick laughs, not just clever punchlines, but a mirror, reflecting life's struggles, its absurdities, its pain, and its beauty. That's why he championed Richard Pryor, a man who turned fire, addiction, and heartbreak into unforgettable performances. Every joke carried scars. Every laugh came from truth. That's why he admired George Carlin. Carlin could take politics, war, and society's hypocrisies and twist them into razor-sharp comedy that made people laugh and then sit in silence, thinking. Carson called that courage. And Robin Williams? Robin was chaos wrapped in genius. He made the world roar with laughter while fighting his own demons underneath. Carson respected that vulnerability because it showed audiences something real. To Carson, the greatest comedians weren't afraid to bleed on stage. They risked their souls for the craft. They gave audiences a piece of themselves. Now, compare that to Jerry Seinfeld. Polished, perfect, untouchable, and proudly empty. He once said, "I'm not interested in feelings. I'm interested in funny." It was like nails on a chalkboard to Carson. Because to Carson, if comedy had no weight, it had no purpose. If it didn't stir something deep, it was disposable. Yes, Jerry was flawless. Every word measured, every line calculated. But Carson saw the flaw in the perfection. When you polish too much, you strip away the soul. Audiences laughed at Jerry's clever observations about nothing. But Carson wondered, would they remember them years later? Would they carry meaning beyond the punchline? Carson didn't think so. And the more he watched, the more convinced he became that Jerry represented everything wrong with modern comedy. Detached, cold, unmoved by human struggle, more focused on timing than truth. And maybe that's why Carson quietly turned his back. Because in Jerry, he didn't just see a comedian he disliked. He saw the death of comedy with depth. But Carson wasn't done. Because while he withheld his blessing from Seinfeld, he gave it to someone else, another comedian, someone he believed carried the torch of true comedy. And that decision revealed exactly what Carson thought Jerry was missing. Johnny Carson never shouted his opinion. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any insult. For over 30 years he crowned comedians. He gave them the couch. He gave them the nod. He gave them immortality. But Jerry Seinfeld? He never got it. Carson watched his scandal with Shoshana Lonstein and shook his head. He saw Jerry's arrogance backstage and pulled away. He winced as Jerry flaunted his fortune like comedy was a business card. And when Seinfeld mocked the talk show format, the very thing Carson built his empire on, that was the final betrayal. Carson saw Jerry as brilliant, but shallow, successful, but hollow, a man who made people laugh but never made them feel. In Carson's eyes, greatness was more than timing. It was honesty. It was vulnerability. It was the courage to let audiences see your scars. That's why he blessed Norm Macdonald, but not Jerry Seinfeld. Because Carson knew the difference between a comic who entertains and a comic who endures. So here's the question that lingers long after Carson's final show. What really makes a comedian great? Is it the wealth, the ratings, the fame? Or is it the ability to make people laugh until they think? Carson had his answer, and Jerry never measured up. Now it's your turn. Whose side are you on? Carson's timeless standard or Seinfeld's polished empire? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit subscribe for more hidden Hollywood stories. And remember, sometimes the loudest verdict is silence.